Welcome to DevOps 2.0, the ultimate JS delivery pipeline. This is a recording of a workshop we gave at the 2021 DevOps JS conference. For your convenience, we split the recording into 9 parts. For all relevant links, timestamps, and more information, see the description box below. Another Git workflow that you are going to encounter in the wild is the forking workflow. And this one, when you see forking, I bet that it's an open source project. When you have to fork things, in 90% of cases, it's going to be an open source project. Now, you might ask why this assumption that this is a good workflow for open source projects. Well, it protects the main repository of the application. So no changes are made directly to the main repository. Instead, the application is cloned. I'm sorry, not cloned, but forked. And forking is nothing else but cloning, but server-side cloning. So just as when you clone the application to your local machine, when you fork it, you actually clone it, but within the infrastructure of your Git provider's server. So the idea behind forking is that you clone the application within this Git provider infrastructure, then you clone it to your local machine, and only then you can start working on any features or on any refactors, but you commit to your copy of that main repository. Then when your work is ready, you create a pull request, which pull request, I bet that all of us, we are familiar with what a pull requests are, but in a nutshell, you're asking the maintainers of the main project, so to say, to the initial project, to have a look at your changes and add them to the main line of their code. So this way, this is a very secure way to work on code for large distributed themes, not themes, but teams, which are very common in the open source world. Now, you might think that it would be good if you are actually an owner of a repository that you expect that's going to be forked, that it would be a good idea to protect, to somehow validate that the changes that people propose to be added to the mainline of your code, that these changes are validated by some sort of a test suite that you defined, so that you don't have to test everybody else's ideas manually. So let's step back from the theory part again and have a look at creating a pipeline that would take these pull requests coming from forks into consideration, but also let's have a quick look at securing your very own repository, your own mainline of code, and making sure that nothing goes untested before it is merged to the main branch. So quickly, let's have a look at how you could create a pipeline that would run when somebody creates a pull request because they've forked your repository, they want to introduce some changes, so they have created a pull request. What next? So what I would do is I would take this pipeline that runs our unit tests and I would copy it, because all we don't really, just to have a quick sanity check and ensure that nobody tries to introduce any changes that break our app, I would suggest that the quickest way is running unit tests. But what we would need to change then is changing what triggers the pipeline. As you can see here, we can have the pipeline triggered by a single branch, single tag, all different branches or tags. But what we are missing is pull requests triggering your pipelines. Does anybody have such a feature? It sure has, if I'm talking about it, right? Yes, sure, it does. But by default, just to keep things nice and secure, it's disabled. If you're not expecting anybody to fork your repository, when this is disabled and somebody forks your repo and maybe tries to run some malicious code in a pipeline you set up, they won't have a chance, because the pipeline won't trigger automatically because you haven't enabled pull request support in your project. But if you wanted to do that, it's very simple. When you're in your project, you simply go over to project settings in your left navigation bar. And if you scroll down, you'll see that there's this pull requests area that allows you to enable support for pull requests from forks. And all you need to do is click that switch to make it switch, make it green, and save the changes. So right now, when I go back to pipelines, I go over to this copy of the unit tests pipeline. You'll see that I will be able to choose more trigger modes, more to define that pull requests trigger this pipeline. As you can see, I can choose that pull requests by wildcard, which means that all pull requests will trigger this pipeline to run. So on push, so whenever there are new changes pushed to any pull requests for your repository, this pipeline will run and check it. So let's rename the pipeline so that it stays here. So this will be PRs, and this will run on PRs from forks, right? Now let's say that you have this pipeline setup implemented. So it's either a pipeline that runs unit tests on a feature branch, or maybe unit tests on one of the forks, and then the tests fail. But with current setup, there's nothing really stopping you or somebody else from your team from merging these changes that are not going through your pipeline successfully into the code mainline, which will break it, right? So now what do you do to ensure that you are not able to merge anything that doesn't passes a chosen pipeline into the code mainline? So it's very easy to get this set up. 3 words that you need to know: branch protection rules. So this is a feature in GitHub. It's available with other Git providers as well, but I'm going to show you how it works in GitHub. So if you went to have a look at your repository, there's this bar on top here, and in this row of settings of the different tabs, there are repository settings. And if you go over to branches, you can see that there are branch protection rules. Let's add a new rule. Now, first thing that we need to set up is define a branch name pattern, or a specific name of a branch that's going to be protected by this rule. And what I'm interested in this case to show you is securing the project's main branch. So I'm just going to set this up for the main branch. So the main branch is going to be protected with the rule I'm about to define. Now, the option that the first of 2 options that is of the interest for us is that we need to require status checks to pass before merging. Now, what this means is that GitHub will expect a status check to get this successful status from body before it allows you to merge code into the main branch. So here you can see that the field is empty, but thanks to our integration between body and GitHub, if I start typing the pipeline name, let me quickly see what was the name of the pipeline. It started with feature. So if we do, sorry, not this, but this. Why it didn't find the name of the pipeline with the feature in square brackets, because the initial name of the pipeline was unit tests, and the name still hasn't refreshed with the integration between body and GitHub. But this is the same pipeline. If you remember, unit tests on branches, this was the first name of the branch before I switched it to feature unit tests on branches. So this is that pipeline, and GitHub will require this pipeline to pass to be green before it allows code from any branch to be merged to the main branch. Now, the other option that should be checked for your own good and for that transparency pillar that you should remember from our introduction, is to include administrators. So nobody's above the law. Nobody can push directly to master. Nobody can merge anything that doesn't pass the pipeline that we have chosen here. So I'm going to save that. And I'm going to show you how this works. And I'm again going to go back to our break stuff branch. But first, let's create a pull request. All right, because now I'm not even able to, I won't be able to push directly to master. This setting up this protection rule effectively turns off the ability to push changes directly to master. So every change has to go through a pull request. So let's create a pull request. Now, this is a tip for everybody who's working on forked repositories. I've done this wrong so many times. When you want to merge something to your fork, not the repository you're forked, make sure to choose the right base repository. I've done this wrong so many times. So I'm going to choose this one here. This is my fork. And yeah, I want the break stuff. I want to merge it into the main branch. So here's a pull request. And now, as you can see from the commit history, the first commit was the yikes commit, which broke the app, and the next one was the fix commit, which actually fixed it. Now, you can see that I can merge this pull request because the required check, so the unit tests on branches pipeline, it's passed. But let's see what happens if I break the app again and I make sure that the unit tests fail. So if you remember that, my favorite way to break this up is changing the internal state of the counter. So I'm going to change it to 1 again, but first let's make sure I'm on the right branch. Yes, I am. Let's save it. Let's see if there are changes. Yes, there are, sorry. And now let's add this change and commit that. Break again. Okay, we have this ready. And I'm going to push this change. And again, this change, it triggers our unit tests on branches pipeline as well as our PRs from forks pipeline. So let's cancel the execution of that fork pipeline. We don't need that. And as I'm working on a very limited set of branches and with a lot of pipelines, let me just make sure that this pipeline doesn't get in our way again. But in the meantime, as you can see, the pipeline has failed. I broke the app, the unit tests, they don't pass anymore. And you'll see that I cannot merge this pull request. So what I can do to make this pull request mergeable again is I can simply fix the application. So first of all, what I'll do, as I mentioned, is I'm going to change the trigger mode of this pipeline to manual so it doesn't run on its own when we push changes to that branch. Okay, now back to the application. I'm going to return the counter to its original initial state, which is 0. Now push, commit and push changes, fix again. That's going to be the name of the commit. Now I'm going to push it, right? And here we go. The pipeline runs again. And now, since we've run this pipeline a couple of times, let's check if the name. Remember that we had this name that was outdated. Yep, you can see that since we've run this pipeline a few times already, the name has been added to the list of available pipelines. So I'm going to make this check with its current name a required check and remove the check with the old name so that GitHub doesn't get confused, because I can see that it's already getting a bit mixed up when it comes to which check should report a green status and which shouldn't. So let's see how this works out for us. Can we merge this up or can we not? It says that it's still pending. Yes, it is. Now, when this runs successfully, the status will be reported back to GitHub, and we'll see that we can merge the branch to our code mainline, which allows us to finish this epic journey with our branch that was broken, then fixed, then broken again, and then fixed again. Well, this is how life goes. We are all initially fixed, then we're broken, then we're fixed again, and so the story goes. Okay, but enough philosophy. Let's get back to Git flows, Git workflows. So